All right, let's talk tariffs and coffee, because President Trump's newest round of tariffs could make your morning cup of coffee more expensive.
The U.S. imports 22 million bags a year.
Brazil is America's top coffee supplier, making up 30% of United States supply. Now, American coffee farmers hope that means you might be more willing to give their beans.
Well, look, prices on coffee will go up regardless of where you're buying them from. It's not just Brazil. There's tariffs coming from all over. Now, what these guys are saying, these farmers here in California, is that they're hopeful that since the prices will go up across the board, this is part of the only 1% of coffee consumed in the U.S. grown domestically. 35% of what coffee is imported comes from Brazil, now slapped with tariffs of up to 50%.
America's favorite pick-me-up, more consumed than water itself. Each year, the U.S. brings in over 22 million bags of coffee. But that daily ritual, your morning cup of coffee or tea, may soon cost far more than you ever imagined. Breaking tonight. President Donald Trump is livid after a stunning rejection shook one of America's most dependable exports. A huge shipment of U.S. coffee bound for foreign buyers has been turned away. The news has sent tremors through an industry that fuels mornings from Wall Street to Main Street. And while American exporters scramble for explanations, Canada has jumped in, locking down major deals with Europe and Asia, deals that could cut U.S. farmers, roasters, and ports out of the game entirely. Earlier this year, Trump doubled down on his protection-first agenda, slapping new tariffs on coffee imports from Canada, Mexico, and a dozen other producing countries. The White House called it a defense of American jobs. But instead, it sparked a trade fight that is now hammering U.S. exporters. By April, tariffs of up to 25% hit shipments from Brazil, Colombia, and Vietnam, America's largest sources. Canada was pulled into the fight too, and Ottawa struck back with $30 billion in retaliatory tariffs, coffee included. For decades, coffee entered the U.S. without tariffs, a recognition that it simply doesn't grow here at scale. But with barriers suddenly in place, the world's favorite beverage has turned into a battlefield. And then came the bombshell. Multiple overseas buyers flat out rejected a shipment of U.S. coffee. Containers loaded in California, Texas, and New Jersey were left stranded. Sources say the rejections were no accident. They were a direct response to Washington's tariffs.
My first guest tonight is the Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who's come out fighting against President
Within
Trump's
hours,
extraordinary
Canada
threat
moved.
of 50%
Ottawa's
tariffs.
exporters locked in long-term deals with Germany, Japan, and South Korea, worth hundreds of millions. Canadian processors will buy beans from Brazil and Colombia, roast and package them at home, then ship them abroad, cutting America completely out of the loop. For Canada, this is a golden opportunity. They gain market share in Europe and Asia, deepen trade ties, and suddenly stand shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. in a market America once dominated. For U.S. exporters, it's a crushing blow. Already, ports in Long Beach and Houston are reporting stalled shipments. In Seattle, roasters are cutting hours. In New Orleans, machines sit idle. Miami's once busy coffee trade is slowing to a crawl. Across the country, from giant plants in Washington to small family roasters in Atlanta, layoffs are beginning. Wholesale bean prices are up nearly 15% in just a year. That means American consumers may soon face $5 lattes where $3 once sufficed. The damage doesn't stop with coffee shops. Trucking firms, packaging suppliers, and even dairy farmers, whose milk and cream fuel the cafe industry, are bracing for losses. Economists now warn America's $343 billion coffee sector could shrink by nearly 10% if foreign buyers continue shifting to Canadian suppliers. Why is Canada suddenly winning? Because for years, while Washington leaned on tariffs, Ottawa quietly built its reputation as a stable, rules-based partner. Canada signed major trade deals with Asia and Europe, invested in supply chains, and sold itself as dependable. And when U.S. shipments were turned back, Canadian exporters were ready to pick up the phone. Berlin, Tokyo, and Seoul all heard the same pitch. Canadian coffee will arrive on time, at stable prices, with no trade drama. Buyers jumped. Germany's biggest importer just signed a 3-year contract with Vancouver processors. Japan's retail giants locked in exclusivity with Canadian suppliers. South Korea's booming cafe chains turned to Montreal roasters for specialty grade beans, contracts U.S. firms once counted on. And this isn't just coffee. Canada has done the same in lumber, aluminum, and other commodities. But this time, the product is global, everyday, and visible. Coffee is everywhere. And Canada just proved it can outplay America at its own game. For the US, the fallout is severe. Tariffs were supposed to protect jobs. Instead, they've driven buyers away, raising costs for importers, exporters, and consumers. Unlike steel or autos, America barely grows coffee. Tariffs don't shield US farmers. They simply pile costs on the entire chain. To critics, it's a self-inflicted wound. Politically, the risk is obvious. Nearly 70% of Americans drink coffee weekly. Every price spike, every empty shelf is felt directly. From swing states like Pennsylvania to cafe capitals like Michigan and Arizona, voters are angry. Small cafe owners from Portland to Des Moines are speaking out. Tariffs are killing their business. Meanwhile, Canada's targeted retaliation has been calculated and precise. Rather than burn every bridge, Ottawa has focused on hitting sensitive US industries while keeping goodwill abroad. The result? Canada looks like a steady, trustworthy partner, while Washington looks unpredictable. And multinational giants are noticing. Some of the world's biggest brands, like Nestlé, are exploring shifting more sourcing into Canada. They don't want to abandon America, but they can't risk being trapped by US tariffs. Around the world, countries are watching closely. Australia, New Zealand, even Singapore are studying Canada's playbook, wondering how to step into US-created trade vacuums. This is bigger than Canada versus the US. It's a sign that commodity markets are going multipolar, with no single nation in charge. For producers in Brazil, Colombia, and Ethiopia, the shift is just as real. They've long depended on the US as a guaranteed buyer. Now, with tariffs raising costs and Canada offering smooth access to Europe and Asia, they're rethinking loyalties. That could mean America loses not just contracts, but access to the highest quality beans altogether. Canadian ports are already expanding capacity in Vancouver and Halifax. Dedicated shipping lanes are being planned. Ottawa clearly sees this not as a one-off, but as a permanent repositioning of trade. And every new deal, every new shipment, further cements Canada's place as the alternative hub. In Washington, the debate rages. Supporters of tariffs call it short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. Critics warn that coffee is different. America doesn't produce it, so tariffs only raise prices and push buyers away. For now, the critics appear right. This isn't just about beans, it's about global perception. Buyers now see US suppliers as risky, volatile, prone to political shocks. They see Canada as stable, consistent, and aligned with international trade rules. That brand shift, reliability versus risk, may be the hardest thing for America to claw back. If the US doesn't change course soon, analysts warn, this could become permanent. Canada could become the go-to supplier, not just for coffee, but for other commodities. America, once the world's trade hub, could find itself watching from the sidelines as allies and rivals reshape global supply. And that's the humiliation Trump is raging against tonight. Not just the loss of contracts, but the loss of dominance. This is Traveling Vibes. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the deep stories behind the headlines. Because what looks like a rejected shipment today may be the sign of a bigger power shift tomorrow.